The Senators battle, but in the end, it is the Maple Leafs advancing to round number 2. Hey everyone, welcome into Off the Post. Rob Wong, joined alongside by Steve Simmons and Bruce Garrioch. And guys, that ultimately ended in game number 6, did the Battle of Ontario as the Maple Leafs squeak out the 4-2 win. Another tough game for both teams. It's the Maple Leafs, of course, coming out on top and now getting ready for the Florida Panthers. Steve, we talked a lot over the last week or so here about the Maple Leafs and the narrative surrounding them and series clinching games and whether or not they could finally exercise some playoff demons here. It is just one game, but having watched Austin Matthews, William Nylander show up in a game like that, do you feel that potentially maybe they are different this season?
I think the team is different, not necessarily for the reasons that you're talking about, but I don't think you should be slewing any demons when you win a series in 6 games that you were supposed to win in 5 or 6 games. So what you're doing is basically living up to what are your own expectations, and that's winning the series. And so, yeah, they did that. And if that slews demons, let them celebrate that. Because as soon as you look the other way from the demon, you've got the Florida Panthers staring you in the face, ready to cross-check you. And that's not the world's most comfortable place to be. I think it's great that the Leafs have won, so they don't have to think about that again. And they go into a series now that I'm not so sure that they should or will be favored to win.
I look at last night, and I got to tell you, if there had been, how do I put this? Brad Treliving covered so many miles in the hallway between the second and third period, they tell me, that he would have put a hole down to the first level of that arena. That I saw him after the first period. I went downstairs after the second period, but the guys who were up there told me he walked back and forth in the hallway. I mean, I don't know if they slayed any demons, but they had to make that. They had to get past that again, and it allows them the opportunity. And a lot of things were said about them before Game 6, and they were at least able to. It's not slay a dragon because they've been to the second round once, but a lot of things were said about their lack of killer instinct, and I thought, quite frankly, guys, they were the better team in that game. Like they just were. They were from the drop of the puck to the final buzzer, and there was their second best game of the series, but a very high second best.
You talk about Treliving and the walking around. Well, one of the things he did last summer is he kept investing in Max Pacioretty, who he believed was the kind of player, even if he has to play him 10 games for the whole year, the kind of player that in those 10 games may be able to be a difference maker between winning and losing because of his history and his offensive savvy and what he's been able to do. Never mind that he can't skate fast anymore. Never mind that he's been hurt and out of play for almost 3 full years. Treliving spent a ton of time on this in the summer and a ton of time believing that those little edges, that little edge can be the difference in a game or a series or a moment in time. And that's really what playoffs come down to so often. In 1 second, David Perron is banking a puck off the back of Anthony Stolarz and into the net, and suddenly it's a tie game. And then it's not tied because this guy, this relic, this fossil, Pacioretty, who's slower than I am on skates, and he scores the winning goal, the series winning goal. Well, all those games he didn't play didn't mean anything. But the one that he played last night sure meant something. And that's a general manager, in my mind, crossing his T's and dotting his I's as much as he possibly can, because you never know when you're going to need something to fill some spot at some moment in time.
Yeah, impressive by Max Pacioretty considering everything that he has been through. On the Senators side of things, Bruce, I mean, just seeing the videos from the scrums in the post game, some emotional players that really wanted to get this job done for the city of Ottawa. Brady Tkachuk right at the top of the list. I'm sure, as we get further away here from the end of the season, maybe they'll be able to, look back fondly on this year. But what do you think the takeaway is for Steve Staios, Travis Green, and the whole organization for what they were able to accomplish this year?
Well, I think what they do is they look at it as a step in the right direction, and the goal next year will be to get back and maybe instead of losing in a 6-game series, winning a 6-game series, and keep progressing. The one thing that Steve Staios did when he came in was he stabilized things, and he's very methodical. He thinks things through, and one of the things that impressed me is he wasn't afraid to make changes, and he picked up some good players. He took some of the pressure off Claude Giroux to be the only veteran in that room by bringing in David Perron and bringing in Michael Amadio, and he went and got a goaltender who was a bit of a roller coaster this ride, but I think we can all look back and say that Linus Ullmark had a strong first season with the Senators. And I wasn't always a believer in Linus Ullmark. I'm not afraid to say that. But Brady, Tkachuk, and those guys will get over the disappointment and go, you know what? This was a good year.
The interesting thing, I have covered so many teams like the Senators that kind of, they take a long time to find themselves. They get to the playoffs. They have a pretty good first round, and they think, we're this close. Being that close sometimes can be that far away.
Yeah.
And this is what I wonder about now, because Montreal looks almost as close, if not closer, than Ottawa looks. And Buffalo's roster, despite all the garbage that's gone on there, looks with the right coach or the right circumstance like a team that can be trouble. And so the one thing I didn't see in the series, and it affected the Sens all season long, was I don't think they have enough up front yet. They can skate, but they can't score. And it showed in the series. Their 5-on-5 goal numbers were not great. Their 5-on-5 goal numbers in the season were not great. And some of those guys, the young guys, either they have to emerge or they're going to have to get more players of higher caliber to go alongside them because they don't have enough yet. As well as the team played and as good as the back end is and as good as the goaltending is, and I think they found a real nice defenseman on their third pair as well. So they're getting better in the back. But I think they need to get better up front.
Yeah, they do.
Lastly, as Steve mentioned, it's the Maple Leafs heading into this series against the Panthers. Likely to be some pretty big underdogs. Not surprising when you've got a team that's made it to back-to-back Stanley Cups and did hoist the trophy last year. But we'll start with you, Steve. If the Maple Leafs do want to win this series or will win this series, what do they need to have happen in order to do that?
Well, they need Anthony Stolarz to almost equal the goaltending of his former partner, Sergei Bobrovsky, who, is, to me, 1, 2, 3, the best goalie in the NHL. Even though the GMs don't seem to think that with the Vezina Trophy voting. But they're going to need that. They're going to have to compete and deal with Tkachuk and Bennett and Marchand, each of them on 3 different lines. So you have Rat 1, Rat 2, Rat 3, with the Rats being thrown on the ice in Florida. And every once in a while, I know Paul Maurice well enough to say this, he's going to put the 3 of them out together and see what kind of havoc they can cause. This is not a havoc kind of team, the Leafs are not. They're like the Ottawa-Toronto series was, I think, the least amount of incidents of any playoff series I've watched this year. It was a pretty calm series overall. It wasn't crazy like what we're seeing in Washington and Montreal or some of those other series. So the Leafs are going to have to deal with what Florida dishes out. If they can somehow do that, then they got a shot. What I worry about is the Leafs live on the power play, and the penalty killing of the Panthers is I think, the best in the NHL.
I look at it, Steve, and I say, geez, I think if we listen to the prognosticators going into this series, I think they're going to say Panthers in 3. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not
Yeah.
sure they're going to give the Leafs a chance. I what I think what I witnessed is I think you're right on Stolarz, but to me, I want to see, and I know that Craig Berube hates this. I want to see the core four show pulse because I thought they showed a pulse last night, right?
I
Like
thought
I
three
thought
of them, three of
I,
them
I
did.
thought they took their game to another level. And I think you have to see that consistently in a series. I had a former player tell me they're watching the Ottawa Toronto series, and they said, you win in the playoffs on emotion. And we saw, Brady Tkachuk have that emotion. We've seen Matthew Tkachuk have that emotion. You spoke of Brad Marchand, who it appears his game is coming on now in Florida, right, Steve? Um, I want to see Rob, if they're going to win this series, I want to see the emotion level taken to another height because that's what's going to that's what's going to help you win in the playoffs is it's an emotional roller coaster ride, but they have to realize that, lift it a little.
Well, I think what's interesting, Steve, is that, these teams have obviously squared off before a couple of years ago, and maybe those Panthers caught the Maple Leafs off guard. So, in some sense, they probably are a bit more prepared for what they're going to experience this go round.
Well, it's funny because when I watched that, I covered the series, and when I watched it, I really thought it was men against boys. Big, physical, mean Panthers, not so big, not so physical, not so mean Maple Leafs. And I had somebody who watched the series over again after it was over. And he says, when you break it down 5-on-5, what happened? Basically, they got out goaltended in the 5-game series. Bobrovsky was fantastic. The Leafs were not. And that was the series. And it wasn't as physical a pounding as maybe I thought it was. I'm going by someone else's view now, someone I trust, who watched the 5 games and said it was the games were much closer. I think 2 or 3 of them went to overtime. So maybe my memory's a bit foggy that way. But I think they have to stand up and be counted. I'm looking at matchups here. You're going to have Barkov and Matthews. That's exceptional. That's, A center versus A center. You're going to have Gustav Forsling, probably the best defensive defenseman in the NHL, playing against probably Matthews and Marner. And if not, Tavares and Nylander. And if they flip the other way, you're going to get Ekblad against one of them. These matchups are really interesting. And where I think Florida has the biggest advantage is third line versus third line. They have Lundell centering their third line. He's one of those guys, if you don't watch them play, then you don't really know how good he is. He's on a line with Marchand, who we all know, and a guy, Losterainen, who sounds like mouthwash. That line is it might be the best third line in the NHL. And I'm thinking to myself, the Leafs have Domi and McMahon and Pacioretty or whomever or Holmberg or somebody. That doesn't strike me as an even match. And I think that's one of the places that might tilt in favor of the Panthers, aside from goaltending, which I think they have the obvious advantage in.
Well, it's going to be a heck of a series. Going to be a lot of storylines, of course, with some former Panthers on the Maple Leafs now, and should get started early next week. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments section below. For Steve Simmons and Bruce Garrioch, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.